The great crystal dome of Nexus Station caught the light of 7 different suns as it slowly turned in the void. Inside, thousands of beings from across the galaxy gathered in the massive council chamber. Some walked on legs, others floated in special tanks, and a few hung from the ceiling on delicate wings. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime to convert thousands of different languages into something everyone could understand. Ambassador Kethver of the Hegemony stood at the center podium, his blue skin gleaming under the bright lights. His forearms moved in practiced gestures as he called the meeting to order. The sound of his voice carried to every corner of the huge room through hidden speakers. We now call to order the 847th session of the Galactic Council, he announced. His voice was deep and commanding, earned through decades of diplomatic service. Let the record show that 2,847 member species are represented here today. A low murmur ran through the crowd. Representatives checked their data tablets and whispered to their aides. The Nexari delegation, known for their love of exact numbers, rustled their feathers in what might have been approval. However, Kethver continued, and the room fell silent, we must once again note that Sector 7 Alpha remains unrepresented. He paused, letting the words sink in. The species known as humans or Terrans from the planet Earth have failed to attend this council session. This marks 50 standard years of absence since their initial contact. The reaction was immediate. Some delegates laughed, others shook their heads in disgust. The Vorthak military advisor, a massive creature covered in natural armor, made a sound like grinding stone that his species used to show contempt. Typical primitive behavior, muttered Ambassador Zelth of the Trade Federation. Her snake-like body coiled around her floating platform as she spoke. They probably killed themselves in some foolish war by now. Or they're too afraid to face civilized species, added the Hegemony's military leader, Supreme Admiral Vorthak. His red eyes glowed in the dim lighting as he spoke. Their last message was an insult to this entire council? Kethver nodded slowly. He remembered that message well. It had arrived 50 years ago, shortly after Earth's first contact with galactic civilization. A simple transmission from someone called Secretary of Global Affairs. Not even a proper ambassador, the message had been polite but firm. The people of Earth thanked the Galactic Council for their invitation to participate in interstellar governance. However, we must respectfully decline at this time. We are currently focused on internal developmental priorities and believe we are not yet ready for full participation in galactic affairs. Please contact us again when galactic civilization reaches a more mature state. We wish you well in your endeavors. The insult had been discussed in diplomatic circles for decades. When galactic civilization reaches a more mature state, as if a species that had barely left their home system could judge civilizations that had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, what was their exact reason again? Asked Ambassador Thises of the Aquatic Worlds, her gills fluttering with curiosity. She floated in a clear water tank that allowed her to participate in the ground-based council. Kethver aide, a young Hegemony citizen named Jorth, quickly pulled up the old files on his tablet. According to their last transmission, they cited internal developmental priorities and requested to be contacted when we reached, quote, a more mature state, unquote. The chamber erupted in angry voices. The crystalline collective made a sound like breaking glass that indicated extreme displeasure. Several species began making gestures that their translators marked as highly offensive. The arrogance, hissed the Reptilian Union's representative. A species that had not even achieved faster-than-light travel at the time of contact dares to call us immature. Have we had any reports from their sector since then? Asked the Nexari ambassador, her feathers now standing on end with irritation. Very few, replied Admiral Vorthak, consulting his military briefings. Trade vessels that have ventured into their space report strange readings and are turned away by automated warning buoys. The messages are always polite but firm. They claim their space is closed for ongoing development projects. Development projects? Laughed Ambassador Zelf. They're probably still figuring out how to build proper starships. Or they destroyed themselves and the buoys are automated remnants, suggested another voice from the crowd. Most likely, agreed several delegates. The discussion continued for another hour, covering trade disputes in the Outer Rim, territorial boundaries near the hegemony border, and the ongoing refugee crisis from the Zephyrian system. The Zephyrians had lost their homeworld to a stellar catastrophe 3 generations ago and had been searching for a new planet ever since. Despite the galaxy's advanced technology, finding suitable worlds and terraforming them was expensive and time-consuming. Ambassador Lyra of the Zephyrian refugees stood to address the council. Her people were tall and thin, with pale skin that seemed to glow slightly in the chamber's light. Dark circles under her eyes showed the strain of representing a homeless people. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice carrying the musical quality her species was known for. "My people have been wandering for 75 years now. Our generation ships are failing. Our children are born in the cold void between stars. We have petitioned for aid in terraforming suitable worlds, but the costs continue to rise." The chamber fell into uncomfortable silence. Everyone knew the Zephyrian problem, but no one wanted to pay the enormous costs involved in creating new worlds. Terraforming was possible, but required decades of work and resources that most species preferred to spend on their own development. "The Terraforming Guild has provided estimates," continued Ambassador Lyra. "To create even one suitable world for my people would cost more than the entire annual budget of most member species. We cannot afford it alone." "The Guild's prices are reasonable given the complexity of the work," replied the Guild's representative, a short, stocky being whose species had made terraforming their specialty. "Creating a living world from dead rock is not simple. It requires careful atmospheric engineering, soil development, ecosystem establishment, and decades of monitoring. We cannot work for free." "Of course not," said Ambassador Lyra sadly. "But surely the collective resources of the galaxy could—" "The galaxy has many problems," interrupted Admiral Vorthok. "We cannot solve them all with charity." The debate continued without resolution, as it had for years. The Zephyrians would continue to drift in space, hoping for a miracle that never came. It was a common story in the galaxy, species faced with problems too big for any one civilization to solve alone, but too expensive for the collective to address. As the hours passed, delegates began to look tired. The chamber's climate control systems worked overtime to maintain comfortable conditions for so many different species. Some representatives had already left to attend to more pressing matters in their home systems. "Is there any other business?" asked Kethver, hoping to end the session soon. "Yes," said a voice from the back of the chamber. It was Ambassador Quill of the Merchant Alliance, a species known for their business sense. "I have a proposal regarding the empty sectors." The chamber's attention focused on the small, furry being who had spoken. The Merchant Alliance controlled many of the galaxy's trade routes, and their words carried significant weight. "As we all know," Quill continued, "there are vast areas of space that remain unexplored or undeveloped. Sectors like 7 Alpha, where the Terrans supposedly live, contain hundreds of star systems that could be valuable for trade and development. Perhaps it is time to consider opening these areas to more active exploration." "The Terrans claim that entire sector," objected Kethver. "Even if they are no longer present, their original claim still has legal standing under galactic law." "Does it?" asked Quill with a merchant smile. "They have not participated in any council activities for 50 years. They have not paid any membership fees. They have not contributed to galactic defense or emergency aid. By any reasonable standard, they have abandoned their claim." Several delegates nodded in agreement. The idea had merit from a legal standpoint. Species that did not participate in galactic civilization often found their territorial claims challenged by more active neighbors. "What do you propose?" asked the Nexari ambassador. "A simple trade expedition," replied Quill. "A few ships, too. Check on the current status of the sector. If the Terrans are still there and still claim the space, we negotiate. If they are gone, we open the area for development. Either way, the galaxy benefits." And if they object to our presence? Asked Admiral Vorthok. Quill's smile grew wider. What could a single primitive species do against the combined might of the Galactic Council, if they still exist at all? The chamber buzzed with discussion. The idea was appealing to many species who saw opportunity in the unexplored sectors. The hegemony had been looking for new areas to expand their territory. The Trade Federation wanted access to new markets. Even the peaceful crystalline collective saw value in spreading their influence to new systems. We should proceed carefully, warned Ambassador Lyra. My people learned the hard way that the galaxy can be dangerous to the unprepared. The Terrans have had 50 years to prepare, replied Quill. If they chose to remain isolated, that is their choice. But they cannot expect to hold valuable space without contributing to galactic civilization. The debate continued as the station's day cycle moved toward evening. Outside the crystal dome, the 7 suns began to set in sequence, painting the chamber in shifting colors of red, orange, and gold. The automated systems gradually dimmed the interior lights to match the changing sky dot as delegates prepared to end the session. Few gave much thought to the quiet sector where a species called humanity supposedly lived. In a galaxy full of immediate problems and urgent needs, the absent Terrans were simply another minor annoyance to be dealt with eventually. None of them could have imagined what was actually happening in the darkness between those distant stars. None of them suspected that their casual dismissal of Earth's development projects would soon prove to be the greatest miscalculation in galactic history. The council session ended with the usual formal procedures. Delegates filed out of the chamber, heading to their ships or temporary quarters on the station. The cleaning systems activated to prepare the space for the next day's meetings. In the emptiness of space outside, automated sensors continued their endless watch for approaching vessels. The galaxy was vast and ships could appear from hyperspace at any moment. But the sensors detected nothing unusual, just the normal traffic of a busy galactic crossroads. The night shift took over as Nexus Station continued its slow rotation, carrying the dreams and plans of thousands of species toward another day of political maneuvering and diplomatic debate. In the quiet hours before dawn, few beings thought about the missing Terrans. They should have. The morning shift at Nexus Station began like any other. The night crew handed over their reports to the day supervisors, noting the usual traffic patterns and minor incidents. 3 cargo vessels had arrived from the Outer Rim carrying exotic materials. A diplomatic transport from the Crystalline Collective had docked to refuel. The automated systems had processed 17 routine messages from various member species. Chief Monitor Vex High settled into his control chair, his tentacles dancing across the sensor displays with practiced ease. His species, the observers, had been chosen to run the station's monitoring systems because of their ability to track multiple data streams simultaneously. Each of his 12 tentacles could operate different controls while his large eyes watched dozens of screens at once. Status report, he said to his assistant, a young hegemony officer named Carrie. All normal, Chief, she replied, checking her tablet. Traffic is light today. The council session does not resume until afternoon. Long-range sensors show normal shipping patterns throughout the sector. Vexhai nodded, his tentacles continuing their dance across the controls. The job was mostly routine, monitoring the space around the station, tracking incoming and outgoing vessels and watching for any signs of trouble. In his 20 years of service, the most exciting thing he had seen was a minor pirate attack that had been easily driven off by the station's defense systems. The morning hours passed quietly. Delegates from the previous day's council session were still sleeping or attending private meetings. The station's restaurants and shops opened for business, serving the diverse needs of thousands of different species. The environmental systems hummed softly, maintaining the complex atmosphere needed to keep so many different life forms comfortable. At exactly 13:47 hours station time, everything changed. The first alarm was soft, almost polite. A gentle chime that indicated an incoming hyperspace signature. Vexhi's tentacles moved to the appropriate controls, ready to guide another routine arrival to a docking bay. Then the second alarm sounded, and the third. And the fourth, within seconds, every warning system on the station was screaming at once. The comm display screens erupted in flashing red warnings. Proximity alarms wailed. Emergency broadcasts began automatically transmitting on all frequencies. "Chief!" Carrie's voice was tight with panic. "I'm reading multiple hyperspace signatures, large ones, very large ones." Vex's tentacles flew across his controls, trying to make sense of the sensor data. The readings were impossible. No single ship could generate a hyperspace signature that large. No fleet in galactic history had ever shown this many vessels arriving at once. "How many?" he demanded. I cannot tell," Carrie stammered. "The sensors are having trouble processing the data. It's too big. Too many ships." Through the transparent dome of the station, they could see it beginning. Points of light appeared in the darkness, growing brighter as vessels emerged from hyperspace. First dozens, then hundreds, then so many that counting became impossible. The ships materialized in perfect formation, arranged in precise geometric patterns that spoke of incredible coordination and planning. Each vessel was enormous, easily the size of a battle cruiser, but with a design unlike anything in the galactic database. Their hulls were smooth and white, catching the light of the nearby stars like polished bone. "Alert all stations," Vexi ordered, his voice steadier than he felt. "Emergency protocols are now in effect. Contact the hegemony fleet immediately." "Chief," Carrie's voice was barely a whisper, "the computer has finished counting. There are 1,000 ships out there, exactly 1,000. The number hit Vexi like a physical blow. 1,000 warships was larger than most planetary defense fleets. It was larger than the entire hegemony navy. It was a force capable of conquering entire star systems. "Are they showing any aggressive moves?" he asked. "No, Chief, they're just sitting there, in perfect formation, not moving at all." Throughout the station, similar scenes were playing out. Delegates were awakened by emergency alerts. Military advisors rushed to their posts. The peaceful morning routine of Nexus Station had been shattered by the arrival of the largest fleet in recorded galactic history. In the council chamber, Ambassador Kethver stood at the central podium, staring out at the impossible sight through the transparent walls. His forearms hung at his sides, temporarily forgotten as his mind struggled to process what he was seeing. "Sir?" His aide Jorth approached carefully. "The military council is requesting immediate consultation. They want to know if we should prepare for battle." Kethver slowly turned away from the window. "Battle? Against 1,000 ships? We might as well throw rocks at a star." Other delegates began arriving in the chamber, all talking at once. The Reptilian Union's representative was demanding immediate evacuation. The Aquatic World's ambassador was trying to contact her home fleet. The Crystalline Collective's delegate was making sounds like breaking glass, which indicated extreme distress. "Order! Order!" Kethver called out, but his voice was lost in the chaos. Admiral Vorthak burst into the chamber, his red eyes blazing with anger and fear. "The station's defense systems are useless against a fleet that size. We need to evacuate immediately." "Evacuate to where?" demanded Ambassador Zelf. "Those ships could follow us anywhere in the galaxy." "Maybe they're peaceful," suggested Ambassador Thizes, though her gills were fluttering with nervousness. "Maybe they're just here to talk." "Nobody brings 1,000 ships to a peaceful meeting," growled Admiral Vorthak. "This is an invasion force." The debate continued for several minutes until a new voice cut through the noise. It was calm and measured, speaking in perfect galactic standard with only the slightest accent. "Nexus Station, this is Admiral Chun-Li of the Terran Coordination Fleet. We apologize for our absence from council proceedings. We are ready to participate now? Requesting permission to dock a diplomatic shuttle." The chamber fell completely silent. Every being present stared at the communication system as if it had just announced the end of the universe. "Terran?" whispered Ambassador Lyra. "But they've been gone for 50 years. "That's impossible," said Admiral Vorthak. "The sensors show. 1,000 ships. No species has that many vessels." "Terran Coordination Fleet?" repeated Ambassador Zelf slowly. They called it a coordination fleet, not a war fleet. Kethver stepped forward to the communication console. His hands shook slightly as he activated the transmission system. This is Ambassador Kethver of the Galactic Council. Terran vessel, please identify yourself and explain your presence here. The response came immediately. Ambassador Kethver. This is Admiral Chun Li. We received your trade expedition proposal from yesterday's council session. We decided it would be better to come to you directly rather than wait for your ships to visit our sector. Our trade expedition proposal? Kethver looked confused. We have not sent any proposal to your people. Your long-range communication systems automatically broadcast all council sessions, Chun replied. We've been monitoring your meetings for educational purposes. We heard Ambassador Quill's suggestion about exploring our sector and thought it would be more efficient to establish direct contact. The delegates looked at each other in shock. The humans had been listening to their council sessions for 50 years. They had heard every discussion, every debate, every casual insult about their absence. Admiral Chun, Kethver said carefully, your fleet is quite large. Is this standard for Terran diplomatic missions? There was a pause before Chun responded. Fleet? Oh, you mean our ships. No, Ambassador, this is not a diplomatic mission. These are our regular work vessels. We were already traveling in this direction for our current project and decided to stop by your station. Work vessels? Admiral Vorthak's voice was dangerously quiet. You're calling 1,000 warships work vessels? Warships? Chun sounded genuinely confused. Admiral, I think there may be some misunderstanding. These are not warships. They are agricultural and environmental engineering vessels. We use them for terraforming and ecosystem development. The translation system seemed to struggle with the concept. Several delegates checked their translation devices, thinking they had malfunctioned. Agricultural vessels? Asked the Nexari ambassador. You're saying that 1,000 ships are used for farming? Among other things, yes, Chun replied. We've been working on a large-scale environmental restoration project in our local cluster. These ships carry the equipment and personnel needed for planetary engineering work. Planetary engineering? Kethver's voice was weak. What kind of planetary? Engineering requires 1,000 ships? Well, we're currently working on about 300 systems simultaneously, Chun explained. Each ship handles multiple worlds, depending on the complexity of the project. Some planets need only basic atmospheric adjustment, while others require complete ecosystem reconstruction. The chamber was completely silent. The idea of working on 300 star systems at once was beyond the comprehension of most species present. The Terraforming Guild, with all their expertise and resources, could barely handle 3 or 4 major projects at a time. Admiral Chun, said Ambassador Lyra, her musical voice trembling, did you say 300 systems at the same time? Yes, though we're hoping to expand that number soon. We've identified several thousand systems in our local area that could benefit from environmental restoration. Dead worlds, failed ecosystems, that sort of thing. It's very rewarding work. Admiral Vorthak activated his private communication channel to the Hegemony Fleet. This is Admiral Vorthak, Red Alert. We have a species that treats stellar engineering as routine work. If they can reshape planets for fun, their military capabilities are beyond measurement. Admiral, Kethver said aloud, we would be honored to meet with your diplomatic team. However, we must ask, why bring so many ships to a simple diplomatic meeting? Oh, we're not just here for diplomacy, Chun replied cheerfully. We heard about the Zephyrian refugee situation from your broadcasts. We thought we might be able to help. We have some experience with finding new homes for displaced populations, Ambassador Lyra gasped. You would help my people? Of course, Chun said. We've actually been working on a few suitable worlds in the systems near your current location. Garden worlds, mostly. Full ecosystems, stable climates, rich soil. We could have them ready for colonization within a few months. A few months? The Terraforming Guild's representative stood up abruptly. That's impossible. Creating a garden world takes decades of careful work. Well, yes, if you're starting from nothing, Chun agreed, but we've developed some more efficient methods. We can share our techniques if you're interested. The chamber erupted in whispered conversations. The implications were staggering. A species that could create habitable worlds in months rather than decades could revolutionize galactic civilization. But it also meant they had the power to destroy worlds just as quickly. Admiral Chun, Kethver said, his voice formal and careful, the Galactic Council would be very interested in learning about your people's capabilities. Would you be willing to address the full council? Certainly, Chun replied. Though I should mention that I'm not a politician, I'm just a gardener. My job is to help things grow. A gardener, repeated Admiral Vorthok quietly. A gardener. With 1,000 ships. Outside the station, the human fleet maintained its perfect formation. The ships hung in space like sleeping giants, their white hulls gleaming in the light of 7 suns. Each vessel was large enough to carry entire cities. Yet they moved with a grace that spoke of incredible technological advancement. On the bridge of the lead ship, Admiral Chun-Li reviewed the station's layout and prepared for the meeting ahead. She was a small woman with graying hair and kind eyes, wearing a simple uniform that bore no resemblance to the military dress of other species. She looked more like a university professor than the commander of the largest fleet in galactic history. Ma'am, her communications officer reported, the station is requesting permission to scan our ships. They seem nervous about our capabilities. Chun smiled. Of course they're nervous. We probably should have sent a message ahead. Tell them they're welcome to scan anything they like. We have nothing to hide. Should we power down our systems to seem less threatening? No need, Chun replied. Our systems are already running at minimum power. We're just here to talk and maybe help some people find new homes. The communications officer nodded and returned to his duties. Like the rest of the crew, he was calm and professional, showing none of the tension that filled the station nearby. To them, this was just another day of travel between work sites. Back on Nexus Station, the scanning results were creating even more panic. The human ships showed power readings that were off the charts, but not in any recognizable pattern. They weren't generating the energy signatures of weapons or shields. Instead, they seemed to be running some kind of massive industrial processes that the station's computers couldn't identify. What are they doing over there? Demanded Admiral Vorthok. According to the scans, Chief Monitor Vexhai replied, they appear to be growing something. The ships are full of biological activity. Plants, animals, entire ecosystems. It's like they're carrying complete worlds inside those vessels. The reality was slowly sinking in. The humans hadn't come to conquer or threaten, they had come to help. But their casual ability to manipulate life on a planetary scale made them the most powerful species the galaxy had ever encountered. Ambassador Kethver stood at the window watching the human fleet. In a few hours, representatives from that fleet would walk into the council chamber and change everything. The galaxy would never be the same. Send a message to all member species. He told his aide. Tell them to send their best representatives immediately. We are about to meet our new neighbors. The docking bay of Nexus Station had been hastily prepared for the arrival of the Terran diplomatic shuttle. Security forces from 12 different species stood at attention, their weapons ready but not drawn. The atmosphere was thick with tension. As hundreds of delegates crowded into the observation areas above the docking platform, Admiral Chun-Li's shuttle was smaller than expected, about the size of a normal diplomatic transport. It moved with the same smooth grace as the larger ships, settling onto the docking platform without a sound. The hull was the same polished white as the fleet outside, but up close the delegates could see intricate patterns carved into the surface. Not decorative designs, but complex technical diagrams that seemed to shift and change as the light moved across them. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and Admiral Chun-Li stepped out followed by a small group of humans. The assembled delegates had expected military officers in battle armor, but what they saw instead looked more like a group of university professors. Chun herself was a small woman with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore a plain blue uniform with no visible weapons or military decorations. Behind her came Dr. Maria Santos, a botanist whose dark skin showed the deep tan of someone who spent most of her time outdoors. Next was Dr. James Park, a tall man with gentle eyes who specialized in atmospheric engineering. The last member of the group was Captain Sarah Mitchell, the only one who looked remotely military, but even she carried herself with the easy confidence of someone more used to exploration than warfare. Admiral Vorthak stepped forward, his massive armored form towering over the human delegation. His red eyes glowed with barely controlled aggression as he spoke. "You dare bring a war fleet to a diplomatic gathering? This is an act of aggression against the entire galaxy." Chun looked up at the towering alien with genuine confusion. Her head tilted slightly to one side as she processed his words. "War fleet? I'm sorry, Admiral, but I think there's been some misunderstanding. These are not warships." 1,000 vessels appearing without warning, Vorthak growled. "Armed with technology beyond our understanding. What would you call it?" "I'd call it a Tuesday," Chun replied with a small smile. "Though I suppose from your perspective it might look impressive. We're not used to traveling in small groups." The casual dismissal of his concerns only made Vorthak angrier. "You mock this council with your presence. No species needs 1,000 ships for peaceful purposes." "Actually," Dr. Santos stepped forward, "we usually travel with more ships than this. We left most of our fleet at the current work site. We only brought the vessels we needed for the project we're working on." "Project?" Ambassador Kethver approached the group cautiously. "What kind of project requires so many ships?" "We're terraforming the Kepler 442 system," Dr. Park explained. 7 dead worlds that we're converting into garden planets. It's a fairly standard job: atmospheric reconstruction, soil development, ecosystem establishment. The kind of work we do every day." The Nexari ambassador, known for her precision with language, stepped forward. Her feathers were ruffled with confusion. "Perhaps our translation systems are malfunctioning." "Did you say you terraform 7 worlds simultaneously?" "Oh yes," Chun nodded, "though that's actually a small project for us. We're just using it as a training exercise for our newer crew members. Most of our experienced teams are working on the Andromeda preparation project." "Andromeda?" The word came out as a whisper from several delegates at once. "The Andromeda Galaxy," Dr. Santos clarified. "We're planning to seed it with life over the next few centuries. It's mostly empty space right now, but we think it has potential." The silence that followed was deafening. The idea of seeding an entire galaxy with life was beyond the comprehension of most species present. The Terraforming Guild's representative actually sat down heavily, his face pale with shock. "You're talking about an entire galaxy," he said weakly. "That's impossible. No species has that kind of power." "Well, not yet," Chun admitted. "It's going to take a lot of work. We're still in the planning stages. But we've already identified about 50 million potentially habitable systems that just need a little help to get started." 50 million, repeated Ambassador Lyra, her musical voice barely audible. "Give or take," Dr. Park said cheerfully. "The surveys are still ongoing. We might find more once we do detailed scans of the outer spiral arms." Ambassador Kethver felt dizzy. He had spent decades in diplomatic service, had negotiated with species across the galaxy, but nothing had prepared him for this conversation. "Admiral Chun, I must ask, what exactly do you mean when you say these are gardening ships?" Chun's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. "Oh, that's a great question. Each ship is basically a complete ecosystem in miniature. We carry soil samples, plant seeds, animal embryos, atmospheric processors, weather control systems, everything needed to create a living world from scratch." "But surely," interrupted the Crystalline Collective's representative, "such work must take decades, even centuries?" "Not really," Dr. Santos replied. "With the right techniques, we can establish a basic ecosystem in a few months. Full biological diversity takes about a year. After that, the world pretty much takes care of itself." "Hey, year?" The Terraforming Guild representative stood up abruptly, That's impossible. Our best projects take 30 years minimum. Well, yes, Dr. Park said politely, but you're using very old methods. We've made some improvements over the past 50 years. Improvements? Admiral Vorthak's voice was dangerously quiet. You speak of reshaping worlds as if it were a hobby. In a way it is, Chung replied. Most of our people spend their free time working on personal projects. Garden worlds, art installations, experimental ecosystems. It's very relaxing. Relaxing? Vorthak repeated the word as if it tasted bad. Oh yes, Dr. Santis added. Just, last month, I helped my daughter create a world where all the plants glow in the dark. It's beautiful at night. She's only 12, but she has a real talent for bioluminescent design. The chamber filled with the sound of beings trying to process this information. Children creating glowing worlds as art projects. Families spending weekends terraforming planets. The casual power being described was beyond anything in galactic history. Admiral Chun, Ambassador Lyra spoke up, her voice trembling with hope. You mentioned that you might be able to help my people, the Zephyrians. We've been looking for a new home for 75 years. Chun turned to her with a warm smile. Of course. We've actually been working on some suitable worlds in your area. Dr. Park, didn't you finish the atmospheric work on the Zeta Reticuli system last week? 3 worlds, Dr. Park nodded. All garden class, suitable for your people's biology. Rich soil, stable climate, beautiful scenery. They're ready for colonization whenever you want them. Ready? Lyra's legs gave out and she sat down hard on the chamber floor. You mean they're finished? Complete living worlds? Well, mostly. Dr. Santos said, we still need to stock them with animals that your people would find familiar. Do you have any preferences? Earth animals are always popular, but we've collected species from across the galaxy. You have 3 complete worlds, Lyra whispered. Just sitting there, ready for us to live on. Actually, Chun checked her tablet, we have 7 worlds in various stages of completion in systems near your current location. We thought you might want choices. Different climates, different landscapes, that sort of thing? The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates were shouting, some in excitement, others in fear. The hegemony military advisors were frantically updating their threat assessments. The Trade Federation was already calculating the economic implications. Of instant terraforming, order. Kethver called out, but his voice was lost in the noise. Admiral Vorthak activated his personal communicator. This is Admiral Vorthak to all hegemony vessels. Priority alert. We have a species that can create worlds as easily as we build buildings. Their military potential is beyond calculation. Admiral, Chen said, her voice somehow carrying over the chaos, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're not military. We're gardeners. Gardeners who command 1,000 ships, Vorthak replied. Well, yes, Chun admitted. But only. Because gardening on a galactic scale requires a lot of equipment. Galactic scale? The words came out as a croak from Ambassador Kethver. Oh yes, Dr. Santos said. We've been working on this galaxy for about 40 years now. We've completed environmental restoration on about 12,000 systems so far. Dead worlds, failed ecosystems, polluted planets. We bring them back to life. 12,000 systems, someone whispered. It's not as impressive as it sounds, Dr. Park added modestly. Most of the work is automated. We just guide the process and make sure everything grows properly. You've restored 12,000 star systems, Kethver said slowly, and you call it not impressive? Well, there are 400 billion star systems in this galaxy, Chun replied. We've barely made a dent, though we're picking up speed as we train more people and develop better techniques. 400 billion, Ambassador Zelth said faintly. You're planning to work on 400 billion systems? Eventually, Chun nodded. Though we're hoping to finish with this galaxy in the next couple of centuries so we can start on Andromeda. That's going to be the real challenge. The implications were staggering. A species that viewed terraforming entire galaxies as a long-term hobby project. The power to create or destroy worlds at will. The casual mention of working on hundreds of billions of star systems. Admiral Chun, Kethver said carefully, your people possess capabilities that far exceed anything we've ever seen. Why have you remained isolated for so long? Chun looked surprised by the question. Isolated? We haven't been isolated. We've been working, learning, growing. We thought you were still fighting wars and arguing over resources. We wanted to wait until you were ready for more mature conversations. Mature conversations? Admiral Vorthak's voice was tight with anger. You judged us immature? Well, Chun said diplomatically, your last few council sessions have been mostly about territorial disputes and resource allocation. We solved those problems generations ago. We thought you might benefit from learning how to create abundance. Instead of fighting over scarcity, create abundance, repeated Ambassador Quill of the Merchant Alliance. You're saying you have no resource limitations? Not really, Dr. Santos replied. When you can build new worlds, you don't run out of living space. When you can create any ecosystem you want, you don't run out of food or materials. When you can move stars if needed, you don't worry about energy shortages. Move stars? The question came from a dozen voices at once. Oh, that's advanced work, Dr. Park said. We don't do it often. Only when we need to improve the solar output. For a particular system? Stellar engineering is much more complex than planetary work. Stellar engineering, Ambassador Kethver repeated numbly. Yes, though we prefer to call it celestial gardening, Chun said. Stars are just very large plants when you think about it. They need the right conditions to grow properly. The chamber fell silent again. The casual mention of moving stars, of treating stellar objects like garden plants, was beyond the comprehension of most species present. These humans weren't just powerful, they existed on a completely different scale of reality. Admiral Chun, Ambassador Lara said softly, if you can do all these things, why do you need 1,000 ships just to visit us? Chun smiled. Oh, we don't need them for this visit. We were already traveling in this direction for our current project. We just thought it would be rude to leave them behind when we stopped by to say hello. What project? Kethver asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. We're moving the Vega system, Dr. Park explained. The star is getting a bit unstable, and there are some inhabited worlds nearby that might be affected. We thought it would be safer to relocate it to a more stable orbit. You're moving an entire star system, Vorthak said flatly. Just as a precaution, Chun replied. The local species probably wouldn't even notice, but we like to be thorough. The humans continued talking, casually describing projects that would reshape the galaxy. Moving stars, creating worlds, seeding entire galaxies with life. To them, it was just another day at work. To the assembled delegates, it was a revelation that changed everything they thought they knew about the universe. Outside the station, the human fleet waited patiently. Inside each ship, millions of people worked on projects that would transform the galaxy. They were gardeners, artists, engineers, and dreamers. They had turned the act of creation into a science, and the cultivation of life into an art form. The galaxy would never be the same. The main council chamber had been quickly reconfigured to accommodate the largest gathering in Nexus Station's history. Representatives from every member species had arrived within hours of the first reports about the human fleet. The chamber's walls displayed a live feed of the 1,000 ships hanging in space like sleeping giants, their white hulls gleaming in the light of 7 suns. Admiral Chun-Li stood at the central podium, looking small and somewhat uncomfortable, with all the attention. She had changed into a more formal uniform, but it still bore no weapons or military decorations. Behind her, Dr. Santos was setting up a holographic display system that looked far more advanced than anything the station possessed. Before we begin, Chun said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's audio system, I want to thank you all for this warm welcome. It's been 50 years since we've had proper contact with the Galactic community, and we're excited to share what we've learned. What you've learned, muttered Admiral Vorthak from his position near the front of the chamber. You speak as if the rest of us have been sitting idle, Chun heard the comment and smiled. Oh, not at all, Admiral. We've been monitoring your progress through your public broadcasts. You've made remarkable advances in faster-than-light travel, energy weapons, and defensive systems. Very impressive work. Then why do you act as if we're primitive? Demanded Ambassador Zelf. We don't think you're primitive, Dr. Santos replied as she finished setting up the display. We think you're focused on the wrong problems. You've spent 50 years perfecting ways to fight each other instead of learning how to create together. Easy words from someone with 1,000 ships, growled the Reptilian Union's representative. Actually, Chun said, let me show you what we've been doing with our time. The holographic display activated, filling the center of the chamber with a three-dimensional map of the local galactic region. Thousands of star systems appeared as points of light, but many of them were color-coded in ways that made no immediate sense to the watching delegates. This is our local sector, Chun explained, manipulating the display with simple hand gestures. The blue systems are ones we've completed full environmental restoration on. The green ones are currently in progress. The yellow ones are scheduled for work within the next 5 years. The chamber fell silent as delegates studied the display. Nearly half of the visible star systems were marked in blue. Another quarter showed green. The scope of the work was beyond anything they had imagined. How many systems is this? Asked the Nexari ambassador, her voice barely a whisper. In this display? About 40,000, Dr. Park replied. Though this is just our local work area. We have teams operating in 12 different sectors of the galaxy. 12 sectors, repeated Ambassador Kethver. Each with 40,000 systems. Give or take, Chun nodded. Some sectors have more inhabitable systems than others. The outer rim is particularly rich in dead worlds that just need a little help to bloom. Ambassador Lara stood up slowly, her musical voice trembling with emotion. You said you had worlds ready for my people. Can you show us? Of course, Dr. Santos said warmly. She gestured to the display, and it zoomed in on a cluster of star systems marked with pulsing golden lights. These 7 systems are within 3 light years of your current fleet position. We've prepared worlds in each one that match your species' biological requirements. The display showed detailed views of the planets, lush forests covered rolling hills. Clear blue oceans reflected perfect skies. Cities had been planned but not built, waiting for the Zephyrians to design their own communities. They're beautiful, Lyra whispered, tears streaming down her face. They're perfect. We use soil samples from your original homeworld, Dr. Park explained. Your archives contain detailed information about your preferred ecosystems. We've recreated them with some improvements. Better weather control, more stable geology, enhanced soil fertility. Enhanced? Asked the Terraforming Guild's representative, leaning forward with professional interest. Oh yes, Dr. Santos said. We've learned how to make soil that regenerates itself, weather systems that prevent natural disasters, and ecosystems that maintain perfect balance indefinitely. It's basic planetary engineering. Basic, the guild representative repeated faintly. Would you like to see the technical details? Chun asked. We'd be happy to share our methods. Before anyone could answer, Admiral Vorthok stood up. Stop. Just stop. You're telling us you've casually solved problems that have plagued Galactic civilization for thousands of years, and you're calling it basic work. Well, it is basic, Dr. Park said. Once you understand how ecosystems really work, the rest is just applied biology and chemistry. Applied biology and chemistry, Vorthok repeated. You make it sound simple. It is simple, Chun replied. That's what we've been trying to tell you. Most of the galaxy's problems come from thinking too small. You fight over individual planets instead of building new ones. You compete for resources instead of creating abundance. You see scarcity where there could be plenty. Pretty words, said Ambassador Quill of the Merchant Alliance. But surely there must be limits to what you can do. Costs, energy requirements, time constraints. Let me show you something, Dr. Santos said, manipulating the display again. View changed to show a barren, dead world, nothing but gray rock and toxic atmosphere. This is Kepler 438b. It was completely lifeless when we found it 6 months ago. The image shifted to show the same world as it appeared now. Green forests covered the continents. Blue oceans lapped against white beaches. Clouds swirled in a healthy atmosphere. 6 months, breathed the Crystalline Collective's representative. You transformed a dead world in 6 months? Actually, it took about 3 months, Dr. Park corrected. The other 3 months were spent on artistic touches. We wanted to make sure the sunsets were particularly beautiful. Artistic touches, someone whispered. Oh yes, Dr. Santos said enthusiastically. We found that purely functional worlds are boring. People need beauty in their lives. So we always add special features, unique flower colors, interesting rock formations, spectacular views. It doesn't take much extra effort and it makes people so much happier. You redesign entire worlds for aesthetic purposes, Ambassador. Kethver said slowly. Of course, Chun replied. What's the point of creating a world if it's not beautiful? We have artists who specialize in planetary design. Some of our most skilled gardeners are also sculptors, musicians, and poets. They create worlds that are works of art. The chamber was quiet for a long moment as delegates processed this information. The humans didn't just terraform worlds. They created masterpieces. They treated the reshaping of entire planets as an art form. Admiral Chun, said Ambassador Theises of the Aquatic Worlds, you mentioned that you've been monitoring our broadcasts. What do you think of our current galactic situation? Chun looked thoughtful. Honestly, we're concerned. You have so much potential, but you're wasting it on conflicts that don't need to exist. The hegemony and the Trade Federation could be working together instead of competing. The refugee crisis could be solved in a matter of months. The resource shortages could be eliminated entirely. Eliminated? Admiral Vorthak's voice was skeptical. Some things cannot be created from nothing, can't they? Dr. Park asked. He gestured to the display, which now showed a cross-section of one of the human ships. This vessel contains complete manufacturing systems that can create any element or compound we need. We build them from basic atomic components. You can create any element? The question came from the Crystalline Collective's representative. Well, any stable element, Doctor. Santos clarified. We don't usually bother with the highly radioactive ones unless there's a specific need. But yes, we can manufacture gold, platinum, rare earth metals, whatever you need. The entire galactic economy is based on resource scarcity, Ambassador Quill said weakly. If you can create any material, then scarcity becomes a choice rather than a necessity, Chun finished. That's exactly what we've been trying to tell you. Most of your problems exist because you believe they have to exist. But surely, protested the Terraforming Guild's representative, such advanced technology must require enormous amounts of energy. How do you power such operations? We use stellar energy, Dr. Park explained. Each star produces more energy than most civilizations could use in 1,000 years. We've learned how to tap into that power safely and efficiently. You're harvesting energy directly from stars? Admiral Vorthak's voice was tight with barely controlled fear. Oh yes, Chun nodded. It's much cleaner than the fusion reactors most species use, and there's so much more of it. A single star can power the terraforming of hundreds of worlds simultaneously. Hundreds of worlds, repeated Ambassador Lyra. Powered by a single star. The really large stars can power thousands of worlds, Dr. Santos added. Though we have to be careful not to affect the star's stability. We've learned that lesson the hard way. You've destabilized stars? Admiral Vorthak was on his feet, now his red eyes blazing. Only a few, Chun said apologetically. Early mistakes when we were still learning. We've gotten much better at stellar engineering since then. Now we can actually improve a star's stability while extracting energy from it. Improve a star's stability, Kethver said numbly. You can make stars work better. It's all about understanding the fusion process, Dr. Park explained. Most stars are quite inefficient. With a little adjustment, we can make them burn cleaner, last longer, and produce more useful energy. A little adjustment? Vorthak repeated. To a star. The hard part is doing it without disrupting the orbits of any inhabited planets, Dr. Santos added. Stellar engineering requires very precise calculations. The chamber fell into stunned silence. The humans were casually discussing the modification of stars as if it were routine maintenance. The power they wielded was beyond the comprehension of most species in the galaxy. Admiral Chun, Ambassador Lara said softly, if you can do all these things, why do you need the rest of us? Why not just reshape the galaxy according to your own vision? Chun looked surprised by the question. Because it's not our galaxy alone. We're all part of the same community. We want to help, not take over. The universe is big enough for everyone to have what they need. But you could take over, Admiral Vorthak said. If you wanted to, I suppose, Chun admitted. But why would? We want to. Taking over things is hard work and not very fun. We prefer to create new things rather than control existing ones. Not very fun, Vorthak said quietly. You could conquer the galaxy, but you consider it not very fun. Conquest is destructive, Dr. Santos explained. We prefer construction. Building something new is much more satisfying than tearing down what already exists. So what do you want from us? Asked Ambassador Quill. What's your price for sharing this knowledge? Chun looked confused. Price? We don't want anything from you. We want to give you something. The ability to create abundance instead of fighting over scarcity. The knowledge to build new worlds instead of fighting over old ones. The tools too? Make the galaxy a better place for everyone. Free? Quill's voice was skeptical. You're offering to revolutionize galactic civilization for free? Of course, Chun replied. What would be the point of charging for it? We have everything we need. We just want to share what we've learned so everyone can benefit. Everyone, Ambassador Kethver repeated. You're talking about transforming the entire galaxy. Eventually, Chun nodded. Though it will take time. We'll need to train people, establish new institutions, help species adjust to abundance instead of scarcity. It's going to be a lot of work. But you're willing to do it, Lyra said, to help species you barely know. We're all part of the same universe, Dr. Santos said simply. When one species suffers, it affects everyone. When one species thrives, it benefits everyone. We learned that lesson long ago. Outside the station, the human fleet continued its patient wait. Inside each ship, millions of people worked on projects that would transform the galaxy. They were gardeners, artists, engineers, and dreamers. They had turned the act of creation into a science, and the cultivation of life into an art form. The galaxy was about to change forever, and for the first time in galactic history, it was going to change for the better. Admiral Chun-Li looked out at the assembled delegates, seeing hope beginning to replace fear in their eyes. The real work was just beginning, but she could already imagine the gardens they would grow together among the stars. 6 months later, Nexus Station looked very different. The crystal dome had been expanded to 3 times its original size, with new sections growing like flowers from the original structure. Gardens floated in transparent bubbles throughout the station, each one containing plants from dozens of different worlds. The air itself seemed cleaner, carrying the scent of unknown flowers and the sound of alien birdsong. Ambassador Kethver stood in his new office, watching through the massive windows as human ships worked alongside vessels from every species in the galaxy. The sight still amazed him. Hegemony cruisers worked next to crystalline collective hive ships. Trade Federation barges moved in formation with aquatic world submarines. And everywhere, the white ships of the Terran fleet coordinated the largest construction project in galactic history. Sir? His aide Jorth approached with a tablet full of reports. The morning briefing is ready, Kethver nodded, taking the tablet. The reports were unlike anything he had seen in his decades of diplomatic service. Instead of territorial disputes and resource conflicts, they contained updates on terraforming projects, ecosystem development, and cultural exchange programs. The Zephyrian resettlement is proceeding ahead of schedule, Jorth reported. All 7 worlds are ready for colonization. The first ships are already landing on New Zephyria Prime, and Ambassador Lyra. She sent a message this morning. She wanted to thank the Council again for making this possible. She also mentioned that her people have already begun training in human agricultural techniques. They want to help terraform worlds for other refugee species. Kethver smiled. The Zephyrians had gone from homeless refugees to skilled terraformers in just 6 months. It was a transformation that would have been impossible under the old system. What? About the Hegemony Integration Project? Admiral Vorthek's report is interesting, Jorth said carefully. He's still struggling with the concept of abundance-based thinking, but his military engineers are fascinated by human construction techniques. They've volunteered to help with the Andromeda seeding project. Vorthek volunteered for something? Kethver was surprised. The Hegemony military leader had been the most resistant to human ideas. Apparently, the idea of building an entire galaxy from scratch appeals to his strategic mind, Jorth explained. He's treating it like the ultimate military logistics problem, whatever works, Kethver said. As long as he's building instead of destroying. The transformation of the galaxy had not been without challenges. Many species had struggled to adapt to the idea of unlimited resources. The Trade Federation had nearly collapsed when their scarcity-based economy became obsolete overnight. The Terraforming Guild had disbanded, after realizing their services were no longer needed, but new institutions had emerged to replace the old ones. The Galactic Gardening Council coordinated terraforming projects across the galaxy. The Abundance Distribution Network made sure every species had access to whatever resources they needed. The Cultural Exchange Academy helped species learn from each other's unique perspectives on creation and growth. A soft chime announced an incoming message. Kethver activated the communication system to see Admiral Chun-Li's face appear on the screen. She looked tired but happy, her silver hair now completely white from months of intensive work. "Good morning, Ambassador," she said warmly. "I wanted to give you an update on our progress." "Good morning, Admiral." "Please, go ahead." "The first phase of galactic restoration is nearly complete," Chun reported. "We've now established active projects in all inhabited sectors. Every species that wanted to participate has been provided with the tools and training they need for basic terraforming." "That's remarkable progress," Kethver said. "How many worlds are we talking about?" "About 200,000 so far," Chun replied casually, though that number includes both new worlds and restoration projects on damaged ones. We're particularly proud of the work we've done in the former war zones. Some of those worlds hadn't seen life in centuries. 200,000 worlds, Kethver repeated. 6 months ago, that number would have been incomprehensible. Now it was just another progress report. The really exciting news is that we've started seeing innovation from other species, Chun continued. The Crystalline Collective has developed new techniques for creating silicon-based ecosystems. The aquatic worlds have pioneered methods for underwater terraforming. Even the Reptilian Union has contributed new approaches to desert world development. They're adding to your knowledge base? Oh, yes, Chun said with obvious delight. We've learned so much from working with other species. It turns out that our human-centric approach to terraforming was actually quite limited. Other species see possibilities we never imagined, such as? Well, the Nexari have taught us how to create worlds where the plants can sing. The Hegemony showed us how to design ecosystems that can survive in zero gravity. The Trade Federation developed methods for creating worlds that can change their climate seasonally. It's been absolutely fascinating. Kethver shook his head in amazement. You're telling me that in 6 months, you've not only shared your knowledge but actually expanded it by working with others? That's exactly what we hoped would happen, Chun replied. We always believe that diversity leads to better solutions. Every species brings unique perspectives to the problem of creating life. And the Andromeda Project? Ahead of schedule, Chun said proudly. We've already sent advance teams to begin the preliminary surveys. The first seeding ships will launch within the year. Of course, it will take several centuries to complete, but we're optimistic. Several centuries to seed an entire galaxy? Kethver mused. 6 months ago that would have sounded impossible. 6 months ago you were thinking too small, Chun said with a smile. Now you're thinking like gardeners instead of warriors. The universe is much more manageable when you approach it as something to cultivate rather than something to conquer. After the call ended, Kethver walked to the observation deck that had become his favorite spot on the station. The view from here showed the heart of the new galactic civilization. Ships from every species worked together on projects that would have been unimaginable under the old system. He watched a hegemony cruiser carefully position a massive atmospheric processor while a team of crystalline, collective vessels provided precision guidance. Nearby, Trade Federation ships were delivering soil samples to a human terraforming vessel. The cooperation was perfect, seamless, and voluntary. Sir? Jorth appeared beside him. The afternoon council session is about to begin. What's on the agenda today? The usual, Jorth replied. Project updates, resource allocation, and planning for next quarter's expansion. Oh, and the Outer Rim species have requested help with their first terraforming project. The Outer Rim? Kethver was surprised. They've never shown interest in galactic affairs before. Apparently, they've been watching our progress from a distance. They want to try creating a garden world of their own. Kethver nodded. The transformation was spreading beyond the core systems, reaching species that had never participated in galactic civilization before. The promise of abundance and growth was more appealing than the old systems of scarcity and conflict. The council chamber was busier than ever, but the atmosphere was completely different from the old days. Instead of tense negotiations and territorial disputes, the sessions were filled with excited discussions about new projects and collaborative possibilities. Ambassador Lara was present via hologram from New Zephyr Prime, her face glowing with happiness as she described her people's first harvest from their new homeworld. The Terraforming Guild's former leader now worked as a consultant, helping other species adapt human techniques to their own needs. Even Admiral Vorthek seemed different. His aggressive posture had been replaced by the focused intensity of someone working on a complex logistical challenge. He was currently explaining his plans for the Andromeda seeding project to a group of fascinated delegates. The key is coordination, he was saying. We need to establish supply lines across intergalactic space. The distances are enormous, but with proper planning, we can create a network of staging areas and resource stations. How many ships will you need? Asked a delegate from the aquatic worlds for the full project. About 50,000 vessels, Vorthek replied, but we'll build them as we go. The first wave will establish manufacturing facilities in Andromeda. Then those facilities will produce ships for the next wave. 50,000 ships, someone whispered. 6 months ago, that would have been the entire galactic fleet. 6 months ago, we were thinking too small, Vorthek said, unknowingly echoing Chun's words from earlier. Kethver took his position at the central podium, looking out at the assembled delegates. Representatives from over 3,000 species were present, either in person or via hologram. The chamber itself had been redesigned by human and crystalline collective engineers, creating a space that could accommodate any form of life. This council session is now in order, he announced. First item on the agenda, the quarterly progress report. Dr. Sentus appeared on the main display, her dark face animated with enthusiasm. The numbers are impressive, she began. We've completed environmental restoration on over 200,000 worlds. We've established new colonies for 47 refugee species. We've created manufacturing facilities capable of producing any resource any species might need. She paused, looking directly at the camera. But the most important achievement is not measured in numbers. It's measured in hope. For the first time in galactic history, every species has the opportunity to create abundance rather than fight over scarcity. The chamber erupted in applause. Species that had been enemies for centuries were now working together on projects that benefited everyone. The transformation was remarkable, but it was also fragile. There were still those who struggled with the new way of thinking. However, Dr. Santos continued, we face new challenges. Some species are having difficulty adapting to abundance. Others are struggling with the concept of unlimited growth. We need to continue working together to help everyone adjust to the new reality. What kind of difficulties? Asked Ambassador Quill, who had reinvented himself as a coordinator of resource distribution. Mainly psychological, Dr. Santos replied. Many species have been conditioned to think in terms of scarcity and competition. It takes time to learn how to think in terms of abundance and cooperation. Are you providing counseling services? Asked the Nexari ambassador. We're providing education, Dr. Santos corrected. We're teaching species how to think like gardeners instead of warriors. How to see the universe as something to nurture rather than something to exploit. And it's working? Asked Kethfer. Better than we hoped, Dr. Santos smiled. The younger generation is adapting particularly well. Children who grow up in abundance naturally think in terms of creation and growth. They're our best hope for the future. The session continued for several hours, covering everything from new terraforming techniques to cultural exchange programs. But the underlying theme was the same. The galaxy was changing, and it was changing for the better. As the session ended, Kethfer found himself thinking about the future. The Andromeda project was just the beginning. There were countless other galaxies waiting to be seeded with life. The universe was vast, and they had all the time they needed to fill it with gardens. He walked to the observation deck one last time, watching the ships work together in the light of 7 suns. The human fleet was no longer alone in space. It was surrounded by vessels from every species in the galaxy, all working toward the same goal, creating a universe where everyone could thrive. In the distance, he could see the first ships preparing for the journey to Andromeda. They carried not just humans, but representatives from dozens of species, all eager to help plant the seeds of life in a new galaxy. The work would take centuries. But time was no longer a constraint when you had learned to think like gardeners. Kethfer smiled, holding a small potted plant that had been a gift from the humans. The plant was from Earth, but it had adapted to grow in the station's artificial atmosphere. It was a symbol of what they were all learning, that life could flourish anywhere as long as someone was willing to tend it. The galaxy had finally grown up, and it was beautiful. Outside the station, the human fleet began to disperse, heading to new projects across the galaxy. But they were no longer alone. They were accompanied by ships from every species, all carrying the tools and knowledge needed to create abundance wherever they went. The universe was about to bloom, and this time everyone would be gardeners.